So let's start to get started with chart.js 4, and what we're going to do, this is a real beginner's course. So we're going to focus on drawing a chart in here. And to do this, first of all, we need to make sure we have our boiler template, which you can find here on chartjs3.com getting started. Yes, it is chartjs3.com, but of course we're going to work with chart.js 4, which is quite recently being launched. So once you're on this site here, just copy this entire chunk of code. Let's copy this, and then we're going to just paste that in here. So I'm going to cut out this, and once I did that, I'll just put that in here. And then I'm going to scroll down and just remove this entire code. This code we're going to explore by using the official chart.js documentation. So if I save this, refresh, you can see here we just have a blue item here, and all what I have to do is to adjust this because they have updated as well to the new version. So now what I want you to do is go to chartjs.org and go to their getting started page. So once you're on getting started, we're going to scroll down here and just create a chart according to their information. However, we don't have to do this here, the canvas with the ID of my chart, because we already have a canvas with the ID of my chart. We already have that prepared. Secondly, we also have prepared the chart.js library. You can see that in here. So what I want you to do is basically grab this chunk of code, and if you do this, if you copy that, you'll get this bar below here. So let's start to do that. Put it in there, and then what I want to do is proper indentation. Save, refresh. Alright, so this looks all wonderful. However, this code here, in my personal opinion, is quite a mouthful. And what I mean by that is, you can see it's all connected in one. It's like one big block. And what I would recommend to make it more readable is slice it in blocks that are easy to manage and to read. And that's what we're going to do here. So basically we have this here, and this is basically the reference to our canvas ID here up. And then in here it will create the chart object. On which ID? Well, this one here, that's the CTX here, that's the reference directly to that. The type of chart is bar. We have the data, we have all the data information, and then we have all the options or all the configurations of the chart. That's all in the options object, and that's it. So what we want to do is we want to break it down into 3 independent blocks that are eventually connecting with each other. So we have the first one that will be on top, will be the data block. And basically it consists of all the data. The second one will be the configuration or options block, controlling the options of the chart. And finally we have the render or initialization block, which will draw the chart object. And this one here is basically right now at the very top. So what we're going to do is we're going to move it to the bottom, and then we're going to connect the data, that will be first, and then the options. So let's start to work on doing that. So let's grab the data area first, and what we're going to do is we're going to say here, this entire item. I'm going to copy all of this, put it in here. So once we did this, proper indentation, semicolon, and then we're going to say here, constant data equal, and then we're going to remove this data reference there because that's already this constant object already here. So once we did this, we have basically done our first part. So next we have the configuration block, and the configuration block will copy all the options here. I'm going to copy all of that, then I'm going to say a constant, and I'm going to give this the config as the value or the constant variable, and then in here I'm going to put in here the options. So we have still more things to do in there, but that will be later on. So if I put in here a semicolon, there we are, and the final item here is going to work with these two here, the new chart object and the reference of that. So I'm going to copy all of this, and I'll just put this at the very bottom. So once we did this, this item here is basically this. So what we can do here is just copy this entire chunk of code, put it in here. And then what I want to do is I'm going to remove all of this. And I'm going to say here, because we have here 2 parentheses, so I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to say here and enter. There we are, and put that like that, semicolon. Next, what I want to do is, because this is just a new chart object, we're going to have here the constant. So we're going to say a constant, and I prefer to use the ID of the canvas that is connected directly with this as the same name. So we're going to say here equal to that, and that's basically this one here, like that. So once I delete this, we're not done yet, but we're getting close to it. As you can see here, this is already far more easier to read compared to what we have here at the very top. However, now what I want to do is I want to do some adjustments, or at least some connections, because this object here doesn't understand that the config and the data are part of the entire code. So what I'm going to do here, put a comma, and for the config I'll put it like that. And once I did that, basically what it says is go into the config block to search in there. Next, what I must do is, if you look very carefully, we're missing one specific piece of information, which is the type. I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to put that now in the configuration. So basically, in the configuration, we're going to cover everything related to the chart. Then, what I want to do is, I'm going to say here, enter. I'm going to say here, the data, because we need to connect the data as well. I'm going to say data equals data. However, this is very nice, and that's the reason why it works here, but this one is a bit more tricky. Let me explain what I'm doing here, how we can shorten this. If the data, or basically the object, is identical to the name, which is the constant, so object is data and the constant is also named data, we can use a shorthand. I'm going to remove this and like that, show this here nicely. So this will work only if the data is identical. If it's not identical, like number 2, then we need to write that out completely. This will become very important if you have multiple charts with multiple different data. So next is here in the config. This is the only one that whatever you use here must be directly referenced here up. So this is very important. If you don't do it, it tends to give an error. So now we have this here. What I want to do is I want to delete all of the information here. There we are. Save and refresh. So now it looks like nothing happened, but behind the scenes a lot have changed. Just to be sure, I want to change here a value. Let's put in here 1, 2, 3. Save, refresh, and you can see here it truly works. Alright, so now we have this here, and of course, what can we do more is going to the colors. You can see here we have these colors here, and these colors are being by default assigned. But we can change them by going to say here background, and then we're going to say here this should be the background color, and we could say here pink. Save that, refresh, and now it changes. Of course, we'll cover a lot more later on within the other videos.